Hello, all, and welcome back to another episode of TV and Us, a conversation show about the TV series we just can't stop talking about. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And each season, we focus on a different show, reviewing it episode by episode, and we invite you to watch along with us. Right now, we're reviewing Succession Season 4, and today we are on Episode 8, titled America Decides. If you haven't watched it yet, this is your spoiler alert. Please check it out before continuing to listen. Okay, Sarah, do you want to kick us off with an IMDb summary for Succession Episode 8?
Sure. On election night, Tom tries to manage an increasingly chaotic newsroom while Kendall, Shiv, and Roman spar over the consequences of the result for themselves, the company, and the country.
It's a lot of stakes.
Yeah.
Themselves, the company, and the country. You know, we need to remove some things from this list for them.
It is a lot.
It's too much.
Too many things.
In the hands of these kiddos.
Yes, kiddos indeed.
All right, let's start off with our episode titles that we would name for this episode. What would you name this episode?
A Hint of Lemon.
That's so funny. My episode title choice was Too Lemony.
Yes!
I'm so tickled by this.
I'm very pleased.
Clearly, we were amused by the same scene.
Honestly,
so great.
That scene is phenomenal.
So good.
It is, oh my gosh, it was so well written. It's this perfect comedic scene full of just foolishness and errors, while the most consequential decision in the entire episode is happening, while Greg is just being a complete moron. It's a fantastic scene.
It's not that lemony. I just also don't know what it would feel like to have sparkling water in your eye. I'm sure that's incredibly painful, even without the lemon.
Yeah. This poor man is just trying to do his job, and he ends up with wasabi and then LaCroix in his eyeballs.
Specifically LaCroix, yes. Well, that's what was also genius about that scene, is that it builds on a previous joke around the bodega sushi.
Yes.
You know? You thought that was a joke. No, they're going to layer another one right on top of it.
Yep.
So good.
Had to pull that through. The bodega sushi has its own arc in this episode. I just love that.
Oh, it's so good. All right. Lots to unpack in this episode today. We've finally come to the long-awaited election night that has been talked about, honestly, even before season 4 began. We knew this election was looming, and here we are. Tell me about what stood out to you, thoughts from episode 8.
This is a bonkers episode. And one thing that I really loved about it, just high level, is that we see characters kind of switching places throughout the episode. So we see this really cool foil between Kendall and Roman, between Living Plus and then this episode. Because in Living Plus, Kendall was just running 1,000 miles an hour. Nobody could stop him. He was on it. And Roman was just kind of in the background a little bit. And then in this episode, we see the exact opposite. Roman is running. He is a bull in a china shop, and you will not stop him. And Kendall is kind of on the sidelines a little bit, or not on the sidelines, but he's on the fence for sure. Mm-hmm. And so it was just interesting to see these two characters in such different positions just 2 episodes later. And we see over the course of the episode, there's a point early in the episode where the brothers are in Shiv's corner, and they have this really nice sibling moment, and Roman lovingly asks if they should have Tom killed. And then by the end, there's that rift between the siblings. So again, you have this really nice moment when it's like, oh, they're all united. And then by the end, nope, we have a little bit of a disconnect. So I loved all of the movement that happened in this episode. everybody seemed to change strategic places on the board. At least the three kids did. And this is setting up what I'm sure is going to be a very explosive funeral episode in the next episode.
Yeah. I think that that's one of the things that the show's been able to show that it can really do so well is the shifting dynamics and that changing of places. We almost start off each episode and moment by moment based on new information that's revealed, based on information that's revealed within relationships, loyalties shift, the affections of our characters for each other shift, and then their amassing of power seems to shift and ebb and flow. This is something that I think we we've likely have seen in all of the other seasons, but it's often been in relationship to this central pillar with Logan Roy. And the fact that he's now out of the picture, it kind of highlights the whiplash that we can have across episodes within episodes of all of these different characters and their dynamics with each other. It's almost a heightened sense of distance that they cross every time that they shift and change in their feelings towards each other. And I think that makes it, I think, it almost is really exciting to see when you remove the central piece where it's no longer about each of their individual relationships, but the central piece. Now we get to see them all bump up against each other, and that's been really, really exciting. Something that I thought you were going down the path of, but this is also very much in line of your comment, which is just like the physical blocking of so many scenes was just
Mm-hmm.
so well crafted, and that sense of movement that you're talking about in their loyalties and affections is also reflected in the physical movement throughout their spaces from room to room or through panes of glass, like all of that. Every time they would get up and walk or when they would sit and be across the table from each other with Shiv in the corner, like all of the physical space that they inhabit feels so symbolic and representative of their actual affections and relationships with each other, which I thought was so well done. I think Succession in general has done this in every space that it's inhabited, whether it's Logan's apartment or at a party, but I felt it very distinctly in this episode as well.
Yeah, and I think also there was so many stakes based on where they were in the building. So even them going upstairs and
Yes.
downstairs onto the floor, having their
Yep.
own little separate space, like there's so many stakes attached with where they are. I think that was a really, really smart choice. And I also noticed some of the camera work in this one was a little bit different. Like normally there's a lot of camera movement in all of the episodes and a lot of like zooming in a little bit or changing of focus throughout, but in this one you saw a lot of panning between characters as they were talking. I think more than I had noticed before, and so that again created this, I don't know, it kind of added to the tension, but it also helped you understand how chaotic and how frenzied so much of this was. And again, this feeling of just movement, constant movement throughout this episode, and the camera played with that a lot too.
Yes. And then aligning it to conversations that they would have too, and the nature of certain conversations, like them being in that large conference room with the giant TV, and just the three of them alone in that room discussing this major decision versus them being out on the floor, or that what I felt it particularly when Tom and Shiv have that incredibly painful conversation
Yes.
and they just shove the knives into each other's guts. But that space is so claustrophobic, but it was fitting for this incredibly tense conversation that they had. So, and they, like went off to have that conversation with each other away from the rest of the group in this kind of quiet place. But the quietness almost adds to the amount of tension that's brewing between them. So, man, the way that this episode uses space is just so elegant, so elegant, so well done. It's insane.
Yeah, yeah. In some ways, now that I'm thinking about this more, it felt kind of like a play at certain
Mm-hmm.
because they were confined to this one location. Granted, it's like a giant location, but for the most part, it happens at the ATN studio,
Mm-hmm.
and they're stuck there. So the way that they use all of the different rooms uh,
Mm-hmm.
is interesting.
The same way that a play will like light up just a
Mm-hmm.
small corner for the Tom and Chip conversation of the stage, and then
Yes.
light up the like upstairs area where the one of the members of the team is like counting down and analyzing the data. I forget what his name
Mm-hmm.
is. The man who is the victim of Greg.
Oh, Darwin,
um,
poor guy.
Darwin. Okay, yes, Darwin. Yeah, all of those different spaces.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I also think is interesting that's noteworthy about just in general this last season is how much each episode feels like it has such a different flavor and a tone and an energy to it. And they're all so distinctive from each other. The freneticness that you mentioned in this episode and that like anxiety inducing intention that you feel is really played out through the entire episode. Such a contrast to say the episode where Logan passes or the episode where they're in visiting Matson for the retreat. Like each episode feels like a flavor and they all kind of complement each other, but they're also distinctive. And you see the way that the pace of the dialogue, the camera movement, like you mentioned, all are aligning to this general mood that it's looking to communicate. And I thought that was really interesting to see.
And I love how, once again, all of this plays into our characters' mental and emotional state as well. I feel like this season, and I mean, honestly, probably for the whole show, but I'm specifically paying attention to this season in a new way. And we're really going on that same journey as the characters are. And I love how everything is paced in a way that feels natural. Because, like, we also experienced the shock of Logan dying, and we needed those episodes that were a little bit mellower, for a lack of a better term, so that we could kind of catch our breath. And now we see the kids kind of coming into their own, and now we're emotionally and mentally ready for these kind of things, just like they are now in this place where they just have to start taking ground themselves. They have to start leading themselves. um, and it is kind of interesting that Living Plus was really like Kendall's episode. This last episode, Tailgate Party, was kind of like Shiv's episode,
Mm-hmm.
and now we have this one,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
Roman's episode, and they all have a very different feel, very different flavor, because each of these characters are so different.
That's a really great observation that the show is wise to zero in on a certain character a little bit, emphasize them a little bit more, or develop their uh, narrative arc a little bit more. And it kind of builds our emotional connections to the characters as well. I mean, every character in every episode is doing, there's so much that we learn,
Yes.
but there is this focus and this slightly more time spent and attention on pushing forward this character's narrative arc overall. Yeah, that's very true. So I suppose this one is Roman's just unraveling.
Yeah, yeah. How'd you feel about your guy?
Oh, this is worst, one of his worst episodes ever.
Yes, it
My
really
dude is
is.
unhinged. He is an absolute tyrant. I think what's difficult about this episode with Roman is seeing the far reaching impact of his decisions. And a lot of other previous episodes where he's being just a difficult human being, it's often a little bit more scoped, but we're seeing the true potential impact for Roman at his unhealthiest states, making decisions for the country and putting in just a tyrant, and it's just like an eerily resonant to some of our current events, tyrant of a leader into office. And I think that is what makes this episode very difficult for anyone who is a Roman fan. So this was a tough one to watch. My dude's unhinged.
Yeah, he really is. He is
It's
drunk with
awful.
power,
Awful.
and it's pretty terrifying.
But I like that you mentioned that he's drunk with power, because I think that and Kieran Culkin does a fabulous job of this, where unlike Kendall, which we'll get to in a second, they're such foils for each other in this episode. You can sense how much Roman has just his blinders on, and his brain is almost in like a different mental state where he's not thinking about consequences. He's just so fixated and obsessed with pushing forward this deal and getting what he wants. There is this like singularness of vision where he cannot see anything else. And I think that that obsessive, like frenetic, uh like anxiety that he has about getting this through, and the just his desire to wield the power that he feels like he has. I think you get a really good sense of that from the way that Kieran Culkin plays this. So I think that there's that really interesting dimension of him being just, like you mentioned, drunk with power, where he's not making decisions in his right mind. That's a very favorable view
It
of
is.
him.
That's generous
It's
of
very
you.
generous.
Yes. But I also think that this comes at such an interesting time, because for the last few episodes there have been, I mean, since Logan's passing, really, people have made comments
Yeah.
to Roman about grieving, and Roman said that
Yeah.
he pre-grieved and he doesn't need to grieve, and it's very, very obvious that he is not handling the death of his father well. I mean,
Yeah.
no one is. Uh and you see that spiral just going deeper and deeper and deeper, and it's like he is going down, and he's taking a bunch of people and things with him, as he is not dealing with his own wounds and his own grief that he
Mm-hmm.
needs to be able to address. And so I think the grief dimension is also an interesting thing to think about when he is being a horrible little tyrant in this
Mm-hmm.
episode.
Mm-hmm. And the show is so wise to have nailed the timing of his unraveling. It
Yes.
doesn't happen right afterwards. He can fool himself for a period of time and be in denial, but eventually it will erupt and come to the surface. And I think that the show's just awareness of human nature is really shining through, because they've nailed that trajectory. Like, you can try to put on a face and be strong and pretend that you didn't have to deal with all those difficult things, and especially in moments of tension, when there's like a lot of high stakes or there's something that's big, often those things are coming to the surface. And I thought that that timing was really well timed as well.
Hmm. Yeah,
Well done.
brilliant.
Meanwhile, this is a pretty great episode overall for anyone who's a Kendall fan. He
Hmm.
makes some bad choices, um, but I thought it was fascinating to show the conscience that Kendall clearly has. And there's so many shots, close-ups of him, where the camera will just linger on um, Jeremy Strong's face, and just you see the contemplation, you see his reflection, and I'm clapping for him. I'm like, yes, it's in there. It's in there. He chooses to ignore it, net at the end of this episode. But I thought that the fact that this show chooses to give him, after everything he's been through, those moments of contemplation about the gravity of the decisions that he's making, I thought was incredibly fascinating. What were your thoughts on what they did with Kendall in this episode?
Yeah, it was fascinating. Uh, just to watch him be so quiet and contemplative for most of this episode, because you have Shiv screaming one thing and Roman screaming the other thing, and both are just running in opposite directions, and Kendall is in the middle. And you can see all of the calculations that he's trying to make. He tries to play both sides, and that doesn't seem to be working. He can't rein in either of his siblings. That doesn't seem to be working. He has the stuff with his kids that he is wrestling with as a dad. But then at the end of the day, he is all about business in this moment. Because I still think that Kendall cannot work in like in a fluid and integrated way. I really think that he can only focus on one thing at a time, and he is that thing at any one time. And right now he has to be businessman. He has to try and succeed his father. And so whatever other moral things he's contemplating, winning in business and getting this deal, keeping this company, that is all he ultimately cares about. And it was just fascinating to watch his little journey. It's a subtle journey that he goes on in this episode, but you see him just crunching the numbers, basically, is what he's doing, and trying to figure out what is the best move. And ultimately, he, feels betrayed by Shiv. So, okay, we got to go. We got to go with Roman. We got to go with Mencken. Done. But I thought that was a fascinating way to play his character for sure.
And the setup of over the past 2 episodes of what's happening with his daughter, and that being a catalyst for him to really contemplate the gravity and the consequences of the decision that he's making, of who he chooses to put into office, all this stuff. I thought that was really smart. I think it had to have been something near and dear to him, so close to him, that would be able to inspire and ignite that level of reflection. But then it's also interesting to see the way that he'll justify to himself that his desire to be a great businessman, like you mentioned, his singular focus on that. He'll tell himself this narrative that it's for his daughter, it's for his family. He's fooling himself. I think he deep down knows he's fooling himself, because that's why we see so much of this tension in him. Like, he knows it's not the right decision for his family to put Megan in office. But ultimately, he'll fool himself for as long as it's working for him for now. We'll see it unravel. But I think that desire he has to be a good father as well, he's justifying away as his ability to be a great businessman. So every time he tells Rava that, or he tries to tell his daughter that, it feels like this propaganda that he's trying to give to himself as well, to believe it himself.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Yes. And it's also interesting seeing him following in Logan's footsteps in that regard. He's probably more of an absentee dad than Logan was to the kids, but it's even thinking about, he wants to follow in his father's footsteps in business and take the company, to new places, yada yada blah blah blah. But he's making probably some of the same mistakes that Logan did with his kids. So continuing to pass that generational trauma down and all of those things, but trying to justify some of that away, even though he's making those same mistakes.
Yeah. There is some really great human moments, growth moments from Kendall in this episode. Like you mentioned, I think he himself is such a foil to the incredibly emotional and passionate and kind of unhinged versions of Roman and Shiv that we see in this episode. That contemplativeness, the quietness, the clarity in mind that he has around the decisions and weighing the different options that he has, I thought was really fascinating to see, and very different from versions of Kendall that we've seen in the past that have been a lot more like Roman, honestly, just like obsessed with some vision that he has, bullish about making it happen, and just like unable to receive or hear anyone else's thoughts, just kind of drunk with the idea of what he wants to create. There's a different version of Kendall that we're seeing in this. So I'm intrigued to see where they go next with that arc, if it'll continue to be on the up and up, or if it'll eventually downfall. But there's a sober-mindedness that he has that's pretty illuminating.
And that's one of the things that I appreciate about Kendall, because he's this interesting like juxtaposition, because I think he really is a contemplator, but he can also be the man on the stage selling the vision, so he has these two sides of him that we see. We even saw it with Matson, and after his dad passed, like there's a lot of moments when Kendall is just silent because he's just processing and absorbing everything. And then we see when he's ready to move at lightning speed. So I love that this character isn't this like stereotypical, wannabe CEO, but he has depth to him, and maybe some different sides that we don't normally see together in a character in a show like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's when there isn't that ego that's been so stroked and puffed up that we can see his clarity in mind. And I think that's what's
Mm-hmm.
genius about the show is that there's these moments in each of the characters, each of the siblings, especially, that we see characteristics about them that would be really great as the CEO. Like the leadership qualities that they do have, the business savvy that they can exhibit, the um, clarity in mind around making difficult decisions that they can do. But it's when there's all of these other things that get in the way. Their own brokenness, the ego, the pride, the conniving, all that gets in the way. But there are these little glimmers where you're like, man, they were only just healthy human beings.
If
They could
only.
do it. They could do it. There's so much of the potential there. That's what's
Mm-hmm.
exciting.
Yeah.
They're not all just tragic, absolutely unfit for the job. They could do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. They all have redemptive qualities, even
Yeah.
though they're horrible human beings who are deeply flawed and need a ton of therapy.
Yes.
But we see the good in them,
Me
and we
too.
want to root for them.
Me too. Okay, let's talk about your girl Shiv.
Oh man, she is just having a rough time. Ugh,
Yeah.
Siobhan. This was not a good episode for her.
No, she's in a tough spot.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that there's a comment I think that Logan makes at some point. I believe it's Logan. I think at least many, many episodes ago, um, where he says that Shiv is smarter than she thinks she is. And I think we see that coming to fruition in this episode. She overplays her hand in a lot of ways. She has the right ideas, the right ambitions, but I think she believes she's more savvy at executing on them uh, and kind of manipulating the people around her, controlling them to do what she wants. She thinks that she can do that far more effectively than she actually can. And I think we're seeing that house of cards begin to crumble in on her. And she's in a very interesting spot now, potentially set up for an end game scenario that you've
Yes.
predicted or shared a couple of times, where she's got a lot of anger and
Mm-hmm.
very little to lose right now. Like
Yeah.
she's kind of burned all of her bridges. So she's a wild card.
Mm-hmm.
See what she does next.
I want her to go nuclear and just burn the thing to the ground. That is what I want. A scorched earth policy, and Shiv just destroys everything. That is what I want.
And I think they're setting up for something like that. There's
That
this
would be
idea
so
of like,
fun.
if I can't have it, then I don't want you to have it either. So then no one can have it.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, and she's mad enough at everyone
Yeah.
that she might just do it.
Yeah. Yeah. She's got very few options at this point.
Yes.
Burned so many of the bridges, and there's only 2 episodes left.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think with Shiv, she has the option. I mean, it really is fight or flight is kind of what it is. Like she needs to either cut her losses and just be done and just remake her life in some other arena, or fight and probably will fight dirty and will bloody everyone and everything she touches.
Yeah. Because out of I think any of the characters on the show, she has all of the information about all of the scandals that can ruin them all and bring the legal action. Like there's some things that she knows about Tom, for example, that could tank ATN or the leadership on that front that Roman and Kendall don't know about, the cruise scandals. I don't know how much they're clued into some of that stuff. Anyway, she's uniquely positioned in all of these relationships. In a lot of ways, she's incredibly central in
Mm-hmm.
tying the sides of the families together and the main characters that we've seen, um, including Mattson at this point, who's kind of a key player. So she's uniquely positioned in the center of it all to go down and have it all go down with her.
Okay, so what if Shiv and Jerry team up and just throw a grenade of all of the secrets that they know and
Mm-hmm.
just walk away?
Mm-hmm.
That would be fun.
There is this interesting dynamic that's been played out around like the boys club of it all, like the
Mm-hmm.
alliance that Frank has built with Kendall, and that being like a line into the kids and whatnot. Like there's alliance there that they could take it out on. Jerry's kind of in a tough spot too, like she doesn't know that much. um just kind of on the outs a little
Yeah,
bit.
but she has been like she knows historical stuff and
Hmm.
she like made legal stuff go away for years and years and years.
Mm-hmm.
Like she she has the receipts and if she wants to use them, she can.
Mm.
Um but I also love that we did not see her at all in this episode. So when she said she was done, she was done. So we'll see what happens with her. I think she's also a wild card.
Yep.
We'll see.
Yep. Okay. Other things that we wanted to mention before we pivot to TBNS awards.
Shall we talk about Shiv dropping the "I'm pregnant" bomb on Tom?
Yes. Yes. Wow, what a moment to do it too. And Tom's reaction is fascinating. I think it is so illustrative of so much of what the show is looking to communicate, which is that these familial relationships, romantic relationships, all of the relationships on this show are so underpinned by this calculating, um, cunning, and manipulation that like they're so incredibly isolated from each other. They're so lonely. There's no relationship that can really be trusted. And I think his comment around like, is this a tactic? And then seeing Kendall flip the script on his sister so quickly because she betrayed him, when several scenes earlier she was willing to cut Tom out of the picture, but now he's willing to stab her in the back as well. The just how fragile any of these relationships are, and sometimes how ingenuine a lot of these relationships are, I think is so illuminating in that one response that he has. It feels so significant to a lot of what the show's looking to communicate.
Yeah. Yeah, I also love honestly, like it surprised me that this information came at this time. Like
Mm-hmm.
again, like we've talked about how Shiv is so strategic and she uh is so good at like moving politically and all of these things. And so I honestly expected her to drop this bomb in the last episode when they were having that fight. I expected her to just throw it at him after he insulted her for the millionth time and said, like, you shouldn't have children, you shouldn't be a mom or whatever. I expected that to come out then.
Mm-hmm.
And so it felt to me like just mistiming this, like it felt like such a weird choice. And so it took me by surprise, which again was so helpful because while I knew that she was pregnant, I was still surprised, just like Tom was surprised in that moment. And then to see his reaction be so harsh, and so harmful to her too. Uh, it was just such a fascinating timing of that bomb to be dropped.
And on the most stressful night for him,
Right? Oh my
like.
gosh.
But what's also illuminating, it's a moment where I think that her desire to like take a step forward to at least try and build a bridge back, and her apologizing
Yeah.
felt genuine to me,
Yes, me too.
you know? And for him to just chuck that to the side so quickly, I think was also even bigger of a slap in the face, because as we've seen, these people do not know how to mend relationships and apologize. We saw the apology from Logan. And so for her to desire to do that, I felt like was such a step of vulnerability, and it was big of her to try and, you know, make nice and repair that relationship in whatever way that she could. And he just throws it in her face.
Ugh. Tom is the worst.
That was But Matthew McFadden's acting in that scene is glorious.
Yeah.
He's so shocked, but
Mhm.
also like it hasn't really hit him either, and he's just kind of
Yeah.
operating out of instinct and defense mechanism, and there's so many other things clouding his mind right now on this big night. It was so fascinating. Such a subversion of how we'd expect that to come out in this big dramatic scene.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no,
And
he'll
he
do
really
something
does
different.
a great job throughout this whole episode, you know, like I feel like we saw a lot of Tom in this,
Mm-hmm.
even though he's not necessarily making these like big high level decisions. He is a very important factor in this, and he shows up at very important times and contributes sometimes moments of humor and levity, but also he is an important player in this. And so it was interesting to see Tom in that light, because we're used to him being uh like the Greg to Logan is a lot of what we've seen recently. And so we see
Mm-hmm.
him trying to stand on his own 2 feet and I honestly punch above his weight, uh,
Mm-hmm.
which was just it was a good time with Tom. He did a good job.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Yep,
still the worst, but he held his own.
he did. He had a backbone. Okay, let's pivot to TV Nuts Awards. All right. This will be an interesting one. There's a lot of content to pick from. Best insults award goes to. What was your choice?
uh I'm I'm gonna go with Connor was running for president from Frank.
That was my choice too.
Really?
Yes. It just it's the best insult because it just doesn't even acknowledge the importance of your existence at all. Like you were not even relevant to even know.
Nope.
Oh, it was so great. But also just like his genuine like, oh, like shocked I didn't realize that. You know, like he didn't even mean it as an insult. It was just genuine confusion. It's great. It's really
I
good.
also love that that is one of the few lines from Frank that we
Yes.
get. It's
Just
just
a
him
short little
insulting
shot.
Connor.
Yes. Who won the episode?
Your boy, Roman, won the episode at the expense of the
Of
country.
everything. Yes. Yeah, it's a win that I do not want for him.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
My
Yeah.
choice was Kendall for having a
Ah,
conscience.
I see. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
I love how we took different angles on that. That was fun.
I also love that it's a conscience that he did not listen to, but he had one.
Yeah. Yeah. Like at least it's there, you know?
We
But
know it exists. We
we
have
know it
proof.
exists. But yeah. Okay. Best power move.
Uh, Greg putting wasabi and LaCroix in Darwin's eyes. Because honestly, like the chaos that Greg created, albeit accidentally, allowed Roman to just run with his whole plan. So
Yes.
like Greg kind of unwittingly became an accomplice to Roman winning the episode.
That's what I've been waiting for Greg, for a lot of these side characters, is they might not be intentionally conniving and hatching a plan, but I love
Mm-hmm.
seeing the way that they are kind of pawns and collateral and being incredibly influential on the outcomes of things without even realizing it. You know, like they have these very small collection of cards that they can play, and they'll try and play what they can. So even Greg, for example, telling Kendall about Shiv's
Yeah.
relation and partnership with Matson, vital to the outcome of this entire episode. But it's just this little bit of information that he knows he can play when he needs to. So good. Okay. My choice for best power move was Tom finally becoming truly jaded.
Okay. I like
It's
it.
tragic, but I think it's a power move for him to survive in this world. He's been pushed around so much by the people in power in his world, especially Shiv. And I think it'll be interesting whenever we rewatch this season to see how he perhaps starts off a lot more optimistic and a little bit more pure intentioned from the beginning, um, or perhaps more oblivious to a lot of the rules of this world and the people in this world. And I think we see his descent into realizing what everyone is capable of over the course of the many seasons. And I think his comment about, like, is this a tactic, really reveals how cynical and jaded he's become. But I think it allows him to not get
Mm-hmm.
pushed around by Shiv anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And you see her trying to get him on her side a few times in this episode, and he resists completely.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
when before he would have done whatever she wanted. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you see that she has lost that power over him that she once had.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. I love that for him. Okay. Looking ahead, what do you want to see in the last 2 episodes of the
Okay,
show?
I want to see Shiv burn it all down. I want to see Shiv get revenge on Greg
Yeah.
for telling on her to Kendall. Um, I mean, she threatens him real good a couple of times, so I want to see what she will plan for his demise. Um, but I'm also just really excited for this funeral. Like,
Yeah.
we have had so much tension building between these characters, and now we have this very clear tension between the three siblings. And of course, now we're going into a funeral. Like, this is the
Mm-hmm.
perfect setup for some utter foolishness to happen, and I'm here for it.
Mm-hmm. Especially in a day and a ceremony where you're supposed to. There's going to be so many important people here. You know what I mean? You're supposed to keep it together. You're the children of this patriarch of this family, this company, this media conglomerate. Like there's the idea of like having to keep up the image of having it all together, and the pressures of that I think will be fascinating to see amidst all of the blow-ups that will happen. We'll see. The show's great at like subverting our expectations, so I'm intrigued to see what they will do, but I think that'll be fascinating to see.
And I love the little detail that the funeral is the day after the election.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like they're going to have time to come down and recover from this episode. They're going to go straight into the funeral from this. And I think that is just going to add to all of the tension that is going to be just below the surface and will hopefully explode out.
Yeah, yeah. I think the characters will mention it a couple of times where they'll say like, yesterday this happened, and because we're watching like a week from each other, you forget how close in time all of these incredibly big events are happening for these human beings. I certainly forget that until Shiv's like, my dad just blah blah blah, yes, died yesterday, and I'm like, oh yeah, for this character that was 24 hours ago. For me, it's been a whole 7 long days till the next episode comes out. But that pressure cooker of time too is something that I forget that the show does a good job of keeping top of mind for me as well.
And I think that just, again, adds to all of the stakes, all of the tension, you know, all of these talks about like we talked about Roman needing to grieve and not grieving. It's like, no, this
Yeah.
just happened. It's not like he's had like months and months and months to avoid this. He's had, I don't know, maybe a week or two at
Mm-hmm.
most.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that the show is so strategic to make this season take place over such a short period of time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One of the things I'm incredibly intrigued about is where they choose to go with Kendall's endgame um, scenario, because he's been such a central part and such a volatile character for all 4 seasons of this show, and I am just so curious to see what they choose to do with him specifically. I think this episode has shown so many other dimensions to Kendall that have always been there, but they're really emphasizing it a lot more this past episode, which seems significant and interesting to me. So I'm curious to see the Kendall arc. I think Roman's gonna reach his boiling point. He's supposed to give like the
Mm-hmm.
speech or the public eulogy, I think, for his father. I think several episodes he had volunteered for that, and Kendall and Chip were like, all right, sure. So I think it's a recipe for something to happen. I think he's at a breaking point, so I'm intrigued to see where they choose to go from there. Like you mentioned, Shiv's in a really interesting position now. I think I see that she'll definitely unleash her wrath, but will they choose to have her rise from that before the season's over, or will they choose to end there? Will be kind of eliminating as well. They've got the time for it. So is this next episode going to be the setup for the full coming to fruition of her burning it all, or will she burn it and then kind of there will be a reckoning of some sorts? I don't know. There's enough time for lots of things to happen. And then there's all these side characters. Carrie, Marsha. You know, where will they come into the picture? Time's getting short.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't
Yep.
seen a lot yet.
We have 2 episodes left.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is just insane. I'm so curious where they're gonna go.
And so much happens in each episode too. That's one of the interesting things.
Yes.
I keep thinking like, man, you know, there's all these side characters that are haven't seemed to intersect too much quite yet. Like, will they even play a role in that end game scenario? But I'm like, you know, the show can do so much so efficiently within an hour and 10 minutes of an episode that I think they can still do it. They can still do it. I would love to see that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we can be certain that we will have 2 jam-packed episodes full of crazy character moments that we want.
Yep. All right. Any other last thoughts before we wrap?
As much as Tom and Greg just annoy me, it was really great to see them teamed up again. They just cause mischief and mayhem wherever they go. They're both incompetent oafs, and they just have a really great dynamic. And I had a really good time just watching them be idiots together. And I would like to see more of that.
They do, and we saw so much of that in previous seasons that
Mm-hmm.
it's tapered off a little bit, but we get a little reunion of the disgusting brothers.
Yeah.
I can't even say that out loud.
It's
Seriously.
awful. It's horrible, but they're great together.
They are. Those 2 actors have so much chemistry together too.
Oh my gosh, yes. It's hilarious and insane and infuriating all at the same time. It's wonderful.
All right. Well, this was our review of episode 8. You can find it on HBO Max to stream. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of TV and Us. Our name sums it up. We're big fans of TV and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories. Everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you hung out with us today as we continued our journey through Succession Season 4. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you tune into your favorite shows. Drop us a review letting us know your thoughts about Episode 8. You can connect with us on Instagram and Twitter at TBNSPod or email us at tbnspod@gmail.com. We will be back next week to discuss Episode 9. We hope you have an amazing week, and we'll talk again soon.